What would you name a newborn child if you really wanted to ruin their life, but wanted to maintain plausible deniability about having done it on purpose? Tony spelled Tone. I will literally vomit. That's how it looks like you pronounce it. Looks like the rest part is pronounced tough, as in, that muscular person looks very tough. My granny is called Eileen. Little did my great-grandparents know that she would contract childhood polio that left her with one leg longer than the other. I feel terrible for this. My granny is a saint. But come on. What's your name? Eileen, right? I see that, but I still need a name. I read that in Leslie Nielsen's voice. He was Caucasian, about 6 foot, mustache, that's an awfully big mustache. My Nana is Eileen, and she was born with one leg shorter than the other. It's very unfortunate. She usually goes by her middle name. Totally fair enough. That's the weirdest name in this thread. I had read a story about how a woman unintentionally named her daughter after a concentration camp. She said she just liked the name and had no idea. The craziest part was that she got pretty far before anyone told her. Ah, look at sweet little baby Auschwitz II Birkenau. You made me snort cherry 7-Up out my nose while I was on a conference call with the camera on. F you and well done. You're on Reddit during a conference call? Treblinker? That was the one. The last name Dyke is very common in the area I live in. When I moved here in grade 8, there was an announcement over the school's PA for a Harry Dyke to report to the office. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So probably Harry Dyke Lamau. Last name Coburn is popular where I'm from, but it's written Coburn. I still giggle when I see that name. I'm 30. I had a shop teacher named Mr. Cobbledyck. It was 7th grade and I was the only person to bust out laughing. We also couldn't call a ruler. We had to call it a rule because he was the only ruler in the classroom. Our high school guidance counselor, Mr. Glasscock. I heard Crystaldick being used as a nickname by some students at various points. Not to his face, I think. We had an Anita Ho at my high school, who was also on student council, so she'd occasionally get paged to the office. Edit, from what I've learned reading these 100 replies, is parents, please do not name your kid Anita. I once knew someone named Anita Dyke. This weekend I was doing some digging around looking at possible names for my next D&D character. A druid. I was looking at famous druids in stories and in history and stumbled upon the name Cumhall. The thing is, I didn't stumble upon it on a website suggesting fantasy names. It was on a website suggesting genuine baby names for your babies and had a whole paragraph on the great druid Cumhall and disliked the book series he was from. So I'm going to say Cumhall. I just refer back to my favorite book series as plausible deniability. Bonus, Berlin. I went to high school with a girl whose name was Berlin and she effing disliked it. Not because it's a horrible name in its own right, but her last name was Wall. So her legal name was Berlin Wall. She was born in 91. Her parents effing knew what they were doing. It's pronounced cool, and not from a series of books but a major figure in Irish mythology. More of a warrior, leader of Na Fianna, than a druid. His son was Fionn Mac Cool, another major figure. Never thought about how the spelling could be seen by non-Irish people before, but now that it's been pointed out I won't be able to unsee it lol. So McCool is the modern, anglicized, version of Mac Cool, isn't it? I guess it's a real Irish surname, but I know it only BC of Derry Girls, so I'm not 100% sure. I effing love the Derry Girls. Petal, Honey or Bunny, they sound like cute names for a little girl at first. Except that it's rather hard to be taken seriously years down the line when you're a full-grown adult and trying to address a boardroom of important people and your name is something like Petal Rose, Honey Little or Bunny Walker, making you sound like a character straight out of a Beatrix Potter novel or a Sylvanian family's toy. Woman who works in my office is legally named Muffin. This is what I assumed the rich girl from Arthur was also named, but they just called her Muffy. British truly upper-class people do this weird thing where their real name is Charles or Henrietta but they go by Binky or Jive Job to their friends. Since it's almost impossible to call a stranger such a thing, they are then always addressed formally except by their intimate friends and relations who they've known since childhood. All of Jamie Oliver's children have names like this. I feel sorry for them. Poppy Honey, 20, Daisy Boo, 19, Petal Blossom, 13, Buddy Bear, 11, and 5-year-old River Rocket. Buddy Bear is kind of cute. For a dog. Macaroni, Mac for short, even on their birth certificate, they always go by Mac. No one would ever call them macaroni, only me and in private. Most people will assume Mac is short for Mackenzie. But macaroni will know. Macaroni will know every second of every day. It will burn deep down inside. This is how I will create a supervillain. Meg for Megatron. Liz for Lizard King. Cassie for Casserole. Reminds me of a Tumblr post where someone said you could name a kid Mayonnaise but call them May. Perfectly normal name when shortened, but they'd know the truth. Reminds of a story a friend told about the surprise she felt when she found out that someone everyone called PJ was actually named Pajama. Name it P. In Thai language, it is a common name that shows up often. It means getting a good blessing. X. If a powerful mythical creature grants you P to be healthy and can recover fast, it means you have received a good P. I know a Thai lady called P Hunter, she married a Scotsman. I knew a Thai lady named Teedeep. I know an Indian lady named Deeksh. I went to college with a girl and I don't remember how it was spelled, but her first name was pronounced P Shampoo. She went by Pooh. My wife is friends with a Chinese-American couple where one has the last name Cow and the other has the last name Pooh. They just own it and call themselves Team Cow Pooh. There's a guy here in DC shown on the news all the time. He's like the spokesperson for the US Park Service, so he's on whenever there's an event on or around the mall. Anyway, his name is Mike Litterist. They don't pronounce the T at the end like they absolutely should more often than not. It always amuses me. Not the name you really wanted as a kid. Then you're dealing with the press for a living? Lol. Edit. His name is actually Mike Litterist. They just say Litterus. One of the news meteorologists in Charlotte, North Carolina is named Larry Sprinkle. He was made for being the weatherman. I think there is another guy named Dallas Raines who is also a meteorologist. I hope he is in Dallas, Texas, but I can't say for sure and am too lazy to look up. Dallas Raines is a meteorologist for ABC7 in LA. As a kid I thought his name was fake, but I guess when you have that name you're just destined to become a weatherman. I hope his parents were also meteorologists. It's Mike Litterist. I have a soft spot for Fontanelle. You'll grow out of it. I appreciate this very much. Things will be awfully hard for his sister, Patella. There are women who are legitimately called Candida. For anybody out of the loop, Candida is the fungus that causes thrush. The infection can occur in many places but predominantly thrives in the female reproductive organ. Ben Dover. Legitimate actual person my sister knew. His parents were really nice people too, just painfully naive, deeply religious types. Let us say after 5 years in a West London comprehensive, Ben was neither naive or religious. Don't suppose he had a sister called Eileen? I typed Eileen Dover into Google thinking I'd get info on some like prolific serial K I never knew about. Just as I was about to hit search, the joke clicked. My friend, the person you were looking for is Aileen Wuornos. Just effing anything with stupid spelling. My kid brought a new friend around the other day and he goes, "Hi, I'm Declan with a K," and yes, I will be saying that for the rest of my life. I was like, funny line but also poor bugger. Hecko, Kecklin. Reminds me Stephen with a PH, Steven. Mark with a C. Kark. Side-eyeing the parents who specifically worked clan into a kid's name. Wondering if he has older siblings named Declu and Declux. Liat Burgeljot Liatstoter. English translation Ugly Rock Ugly Ugly Daughter. This is a perfectly valid name around here and I don't know why. It's dying though, thankfully. Norwegian, no women named Burgeljot, 40s and up, but old names are popular now, so I wouldn't be shocked to see an infant Burgeljot. Fortunately the name does not actually mean rock ugly, it's salvation plus light, and while rock hill is one possible meaning of berg, Liat is not a word in modern Norwegian, so that's A+. I can't tell if you're just trying to explain the different interpretation of the name in a Norwegian dialect or not, but the person above is Icelandic. Yes, my language isn't fabulous, but Burgeljot and Islandska can indeed mean ugly rock. Knew a guy named Otto Graf. That was just weird. I knew some named Samuel Witch. Saw an ad for an insurance agent named Chip Monk. Had a friend with the first and middle name just in time. I'm dying thinking of him trying to get someone to sign something for him. Yes, I want you to make it out to Otto Graf. No, I swear it's not a prank. I had an art teacher in middle school whose name was Mrs. Cox. We would talk in hushed tones about the potential first names she gave her son. Was it Harry? One day, she heard our musings and relented that she named her son Seymour, and that we were to end our nonsense immediately. It had the opposite effect, and our giggles when she walked into the room only intensified. She had married into the name, but I'm unsure what her maiden name is. We later found out she named her firstborn son Seymour after her father, an apparent tradition in the family her husband chose to honor. Unfortunate for that boy that his last name was also Cox. I imagine school was not easy for the lad. Edit. Spelling. On mobile. Reminds me of the drama teacher at my school whose name was Mrs. Seaman, which isn't that bad, but teenagers being what they are, was bad enough on its own, and then someone caught wind of the fact that her husband's name was Dick. My cousin is a Mrs. Seaman. Her husband, ISHU not, is in the Navy. Stupid military names are the best. I was delighted to meet the Honorable CPTN Sergeant at an event once. Sadly, he had never held a rank below junior lieutenant. X-A12. No plausible deniability. Given Elon's general behavior, I find it entirely plausible that he thought that was genuinely the raddest name ever. He's got the demeanor of a socially stunted 12-year-old. You have changed my mind. Chris Stauffer as Christopher or Molly as Molly. This gave me an aneurysm. I stroked out typing it. Gaylord. Yes, this is an actual name, and it makes me depressingly sigh to think of it again. The Gaylord is a huge, stunning hotel chain in the States. I laughed when I first saw the Gaylord Palms in Florida, and then when I went in one for the first time, I was amazed. Gaylord owns a lot of property in Nashville. I stayed at the Gaylord in Nashville. It's effing insane they have an entire town that's indoors, including a river that runs around it. Syphilis. I had a friend who thought this was the most beautiful name, but he didn't know it was an STD. I've heard of a kid called Chlamydia. Chlamydia, your dad's here. My surname is King, so either Joe or Mark or Wan. Wayne. I actually went to school with somebody called Wayne King. I have no idea why they called him that. You wanker. Span. Adolf. Nobody recovers from that anymore. That's my granddad's name. He is Polish. Mostly people call him Dolek for short. Lamau. There's another one, Dalek. That name should be exterminated. A girl I knew had a brother named Jack Sopf. There's a BTCC driver called Jack Goff. Yes, the commentators say his name quickly and it must absolutely be on purpose. My parents knew someone in university who called himself Dick, from Richard of course. Dick's last name was Trickle. My dad in particular can't tell the story without laughing uncontrollably. I'd say that Dick Trickle gets my vote. Edit. Thank you all for sharing with me the hilarious names you've heard. They are absolutely ridiculous. Who thinks of these names as viable options for their children? There was a NASCAR driver in the 80s by that name. I still think he should have been sponsored by Depends. Wow. I grew up hearing that name so much that the literal meaning never occurred to me until now. Dick Trickle was a famous race car driver. Placenta. My older sister is a nurse and she actually had a patient who named her baby girl this because she thought it sounded pretty. I mean, how would you even shorten that into a plausible nickname? Lacey. Has the same energy as Megatron Griffin. I went to school with a girl named Summer Eve, which is a douche. Sisters called April, May and June. Last name Showers. I learned that from Pete Twinkle and Greg Stink. Bambi Lamb. If you're reading this, sorry I kept singing Black Betty. In high school I knew someone whose last name was Null and she crashed databases and web forms everywhere she went. She changed her last name legally on her 18th birthday to Null so it was pronounced the same, but didn't crash things. Null means F in Swedish. KF. Amy Schumer already did this genital fissure, so genital fissure, which is a skin tear on your genitals. She claims to not have realized but doubt it. She apparently changed the middle name cause of this. But yeah, I don't put it past her to do it and not expect the backlash. Karen. I don't think I need to elaborate further. It's kinda effed up that we all just decided one day that the name Karen now means B. I wonder if it will follow the path of Chad? I feel like that name went from supreme douchebag to supreme badass overnight. I was so confused by that. I've heard Kyle being the male version of Karen, but haven't seen it much. I wish people wouldn't use names like that at all. I have two friends named Karen and they are pretty much the opposite of the meme one. Annalie. It's the perfect curse. I've met a couple Annalies. I'm like, why would you name your kid Annalie? I made a cake for a child named Annalie when I worked in a bakery. That's where I even got the name from. It was so disheartening. Mike Hunt, Eric Shin, Dick Dumas. These are real people. Hugh Janus. Latrine. You mean you changed it to latrine? Yeah, it used to be SH house. Gotta love a Men in Tights reference. Had a friend in middle school that said she wanted to name her future daughter Lizard and call her Liz for short, so that when people assume it stands for Elizabeth or assuming the child could correct them that it's short for lizard. This is like my boyfriend who jokes about calling a future daughter May, short for mayonnaise. I wanted to name my daughter Donna, short for my favorite movie, Dawn of the Dead. Wife vetoed. This is my son Garrett, short for cigarette. One that always made me chuckle was Gary Neville's dad Neville. I like Douglas MacArthur's grandfather Arthur MacArthur, not to be confused with his father Arthur MacArthur Jr., or his brother Arthur MacArthur III. Who does it 3 times in a row? It sounds like a Bodie McBoatface joke. I knew a Buster Hyman. His parents did that on purpose. I'll not be convinced otherwise. Snith Jom. Having a surname as a first name, and first name as a surname, means people would mentally swap them. Having N instead of M would keep getting autocorrected on computer forms and causing heck for paperwork. Both you can blame on typos when completing the birth certificate. Legit. My cousin has a common first name as a last name and a common last name as a first name. He's been fighting with it his whole life. My husband's last name is Arts. I joke that we should name a baby boy Marshall. I would suggest you name baby Liberal, regardless if it is a boy or a girl. 1. In 2006, a local couple named their son Adolf Hitler. The authorities took the child away in 2010. And then there's Adolf Hitler, the politician from Africa. He and his parents had no idea about the painter and serial mass killer. I know a guy named Seymour Butts. There was a colorectal surgeon in my building called Seymour Bloom, and every day it took all my self-restraint to not Sharpie out the L. Back in the day, I knew of 3 orthopedic surgeons named DRS, Needle, Crutcher, and Payne. They shared an office together. Also had a patient named Verena. That's an unfortunate name. Edit. OMG. I totally forgot that I went to high school with a Terry Safari and a Tony Safoni. The Great Cornholio. New Hampshire had a representative named Dick Sweat in the mid-90s. Anakin. Not exactly the same thing, but my half-brother and sister, twins, are called Luke and Leia. My father's nickname in university was Anakin Skywalker. Don't know if that has nothing to do with it. Also, one of the foster parents I had at one point had a family friend, whose baby was called Melina, which, while it sounds cute, means bloody stool. What do you think was going through their mind when they realized this error? If it was a boy, Sue. Love me some Johnny Cash. Written by Shel Silverstein. Well performed by Mr. Cash. Tragedy. Shazam. Pronounced Shuzam. Really stress that last syllable. Little Prince would be a close second. Knew a kid named Holden Icecock. Princess. I've actually literally met someone named Princess. Are they a good dog? Ironically, I also have friends with a dog named Princess. So yes. SH Heed. Pronounced SHH Eid. My sister graduated with a girl named Stanya. Say it out loud. Editing to add, she went by her middle name, but they said her full name at graduation. I'm assuming this is a valid name in another language, and this is just an unfortunate coincidence? That's generous, but possible. It's probable that they just put SH in front of Tanya. I think I could ruin my son's life by naming him T'Challa. I am not black. Haywood Joblom. Knew a guy in college whose last name was then legally changed it to Raider. Why he waited so long was bizarre. In Indiana, there is a man named Tom who created a line of RVs. There were literally signs near his business that told you that you were in our country. This was until maybe 20 years ago. Tom died in 2015 and the business was acquired. I heard about a sweet, young couple, very naive church-going folk, and they were expecting their first, a little boy. Someone from their church had to sit them down and gently explain why the first name Eaton was a mistake given that their last name was Cox.